This is the progress overview extended version for the Gillian M, 7.5 years old, GMFCS level 4. We continue to talk about counterbalancing and positional control in sitting. So this is part 2. In part 1, we talked about the fine elements of transformation. So basically what we looked at, we've deconstructed the nature of achievement. We've looked at all the key elements: head control, independent shoulder girdle, independent trunk movement. So these 3 key components, we looked at the achievements, and we just gave a quick overview to begin with to what were the troubles, because to a certain extent they look quite intuitive. The stiffness is obvious, the lack of the head control independence is obvious, the drag of the arm is obvious, the lack of counterbalancing or any freedom of the trunk is obvious. However, in this video we're going to zoom into the details and have a closer look, because one thing is to see the sitting position, but on the other hand, those components of stiffness and so on, they really integrate and interpolate with each other. So pretty much you need just one look at the child to be able to set the correct expectations on what they're going to have. So that's what we're going to study. How the other signs are actually reflecting through, because sitting to a great extent is very much a crowning achievement, right? It's the ability to integrate a lot of components together with the strength. So it's not the elementary thing. So that's why if we want to understand how the evolution of the quadriplegic child works, what it takes and what are the stages of transformation, why it takes time, where are we coming from, what elements have to take place. So this is what we want to elaborate on in this particular video. So we quickly begin with the review of the catastrophe in the tailor sitting that she's had in the beginning, the arching or the collapse forwards, the inability to engage the arms into any sort of the support, lack of sitting platform, lack of any counterbalancing within the upper body. So the arms are being stiffly stuck, the head doesn't have any independence. You see the drop to the side leads to the shooting of the arms. So what we're going to do, we're going to now look at the preliminary components that are behind it, because this specific stiffness and the incapacitation in sitting is the extension, is the reflection of these negative qualities that were present all the way throughout her entire being and the entire set of musculoskeletal arrangements and alignments. So throughout this journey, this educational journey, we want to keep our triple focus, right? We want to keep our triple focus on the control of the head, on the independence of the shoulder girdle, and on the independence of the trunk. So these are the 3 elements that we want to keep in mind. And we're going to start with the most essential of them, the head control or absence thereof. So what we are seeing here, even the very basic, very sort of relaxed position actually shows lack of head control. I'm supporting her by the chest. What happens? The shoulders drop, the head drops. No power there. Now this position is even obviously more challenging. That's a reflection of stiffness. And what we're seeing here, it's the most benign of the situations. She's being on the floor, on the play mats, soft play mats, nice cozy towel, and then I'm just doing a very simple movement, right? I'm moving her by a single arm. What happens? You can see that both arms are stuck, but from our current perspective, what is more important? The head and the arms and the rest of the trunk, everything moves as a single unit. You see, even if I go as far as just continuing the movement of the arm, you can observe very clearly lack of counterbalancing, so lack of any independence of the head movement. Now think about it. Like, this is the beautiful selective adjustment that she has achieved by now. So this is the adjustment that she has in the sitting position, multi-directional, multi-levels with the different placement of the upper body. Compare the complexity of sitting with complexity of lying down. Lying down is much simpler, it's much less challenging. It's a horizontal position at the end of the day. And what we are seeing here, well, she is in trouble. She doesn't have any counterbalancing even there. So I'm getting back to the support by the chest. What do we see here? Same challenges, right? I'm trying to land her on the ground. What we're observing? We're observing severe troubles. Look at that. These are the legs which are just hanging in the air. They're not bending even, right? And as we move further, the arms are just touching the ground. She can't take the head over, so the head is completely stuck on the ground. Now we're looking at the even less challenging situation. She's just being placed on her back. And any attempts to move the head, I move the head for her, right? Look at this, how blocked is the neck, how limited is the mobility, and respectively with this limited mobility of the head, what you are seeing, the spontaneous drag of the arms upwards. And now, please don't fall into the trap of thinking of neurology, thinking of reflexes and so on. This is a pure myofascial connection. You see, as the head is being moved to the side, what happens? The restrictions that descend from the neck onto the clavicle, they are being activated. The similar fashion, the restrictions that descend onto the shoulder blade, they are being activated, and therefore the movement of the head pulls, physically pulls those myofascial structures upwards towards the neck. So it has nothing to do with the brain. No need to blame the brain for this. This is a purely physical event. So what we have to look at, we have to find the ways of changing the situation. But on the other hand, if you're quick to jump to the conclusion, oh, we should release these muscles, well, that will be flawed judgment as well. Because what we are seeing here, we are seeing the weakness. So if she's to undergo pure muscular release, she's just going to flop even more forward. So this is the essential understanding that one has to take into account, that it's not that simple. So you really have to look for the true deep strengthening of the fascial structures. We've looked at the positions on the back, we looked at the positions on the front, we looked at the supported positions. Well, nowhere in none of those positions we see any freedom of the head movement. That's a strong enough indicator that there are problems. So obviously, if once you see the child being incapacitated and lacking the head mobility, lacking the independence of the head control in any of those placements, well, how would you expect them to be able to deliver these beautiful movements as she's able to do now? Well, there is a lot of work behind it. And that has to be understood very clearly, right? Because if I'm just putting her on the ground, what happens? The nose goes in, she is unable to lift herself, and she is completely stuck. So these are the components of the absent head control. So that's the component number one, absence of the head control. And this view brings us to the next component, which we really have to understand and study selectively. This is the independence of the arm. So this movement is high quality, independent movement, the free movement of the arm. But it's important to understand that these free movements of the arms, they are preceded by their ability to transfer the weight. But let's not jump ahead, let's just look at the essential components. This is what we want to overcome the most. We want to overcome the passive or spontaneous automatic drag of the arms, where they're not having any independence from the position of the head and from the position of the upper body. So let's study the situation with the arms in closer detail as our next step. So what we're seeing, well, it's a typical situation, right? Even in the just most benign, presumably relaxed supine position, the arms are all the way up. Why is that? Because of the weakness of the neck and the vertebral column, which causes the tilt of the head, which in turn brings the pull of the arms upwards. So now let's have a closer look at the different sets of the performances, and all the time we're seeing the same picture. The arms are always up, always being pulled up. Especially if there is any engagement, any movement of the head, what we are seeing, the arms are shooting backwards even more. I already shown these pictures and they are really informative. The automatic reactions. Like this is, I really want you to understand this very clearly. How could the person use the arms independently if even the slightest movement of the head translates into those automatic pulls of the entire fascial set of layers? So this is really a challenge that she would be hard pressed to overcome. This is really the challenge that goes well beyond her intelligence capacity. So she's locked within this situation. Unless you help a child to get out of it, it's impossible. So now the other one shows you again with the emphasis on the position of the arms. What we are seeing here, the arms are not free. Once the upper body position changes, the arms are being locked underneath. She can't release them, she can't take them out, even though she obviously doesn't like the position. You can see that the arms are stuck, and you can observe that the movement forward actually is a very strange one. So where the movement of the entire body is propelled by the extreme rigidity of the back, which works like a trigger, in other words, sort of shoots her like an arrow out of a bow, so works as a bowstring. So that's really a set of challenges, and I'm bringing these pictures deliberately for your attention so that you would understand that these things, they come hand in hand. The lack of independence, the inability to get the selective movement of the arms, and of course, as the prior demonstration showed, the lack of the independence of the head, that really should bring you to the realization that if those components are not changed, a child does not have any slightest chance to get this quality of adjustment. This is the fundamental thing that you have to realize. But on the other hand, the stiffness is the reflection of the intrinsic weakness. So therefore, shooting Botox everywhere or trying to just deliver the release is not going to bring the other component, is not going to bring the necessary strength. So this is what you have to take into consideration, and that's what we call the soft strength of the deep fascia core that ABR helps to develop. And respectively, what we are looking at this situation where there is no ability to engage the arms into any sort of weight-bearing transfer. You can see she just drops absolutely helplessly. Well, let's have a look at the new situation so that you would really appreciate how the real transfer of the weight on the arms work. So this is it. This is the new situation in 2011. What we are seeing, the comfortable ability to transfer the weight on the elbow. Why is it there? Because the shoulder blade stability is very much present. The shoulder blade doesn't slide, the shoulder blade doesn't sink in, the shoulder blade doesn't conflict with the vertebral column. And as a result, she is able to transfer the weight on the elbow. And what we are seeing, that even if I'm challenging her position by letting her really go onto the arm, what she's able to do, she's able to counterbalance, counter move, and shift the weight selectively without ever sliding from it. So that's a huge difference from the situation that we've seen before, when she was just completely unable to unglue, to get the arms unstuck from the rest of the body. So this is again another clear indication for you, which highlights how important is the single arm weight bearing. This is really critical step in the development of the control and the ability to use the shoulder girdle for the support, because the independence of the free movement of the arm is preceded by the ability to transfer the weight on the elbow. So that's the rule that you have to take into account and remember this sequence. This is a quick summary of the arm part, that the arms have to be independent if you want high quality sitting, and the other positions are easier than sitting. So the head control and the independence of the arms, they have to be present everywhere. Not only in sitting, but they have to be preceded by the release of the arms in the supine position, in the prone position, on the side, everywhere. So that's the key element. But in her case, what we've seen, it's the single block situation. It's the overall stiffness, which not only affects the head and the shoulders, it's the entire body. So once again, I'm bringing your attention to this view because it's so dramatic. You can see that this is just a really smallest of challenges, the movement by the arm, right? The movement by the arm. So where she just should be able to move it selectively without any effect on the rest of the body. What happens here? The entire body just being dragged as a single unit. So this is a dramatic presence of stiffness. When she's lying on her back, everything is super stiff, and that's another demonstration of this super stiffness, single block movement. There is no independence whatsoever. To illustrate this, let's have a look at the new and improved situation. So what you're seeing the remarkable evolution, the ability to get the selective movement of the head and the selective movement of the trunk, where the weight remains on the arm whilst the body actually moves selectively, or the head moves selectively. Compare this with the original stiff situations. So once again, when you look at those tests, think about those like in a really practical manner. These are the easy tests to do. Just think about them, and that's what you actually can test your child for. And if you're going to see those levels of stiffness, those levels of lacking independence, you shouldn't be surprised with the limitations of the mobility and the quality of the movement. But you can see here in the present situation, this girl, she's able to bring much or withstand much greater challenges. She is able to withstand the transfer of the entire body weight on the elbows and at the same time being moved back and forth without losing the control or without losing the grip. So this is the remarkable strength. And you can see here, this is another selective component where you can observe very clearly that she is able to bring the selective head movements in the quadruped position. The quadruped position is very difficult. The quadruped position is a very big milestone that she has to reach as the next step, and that's going to be the future transformation. And as we continue to observe the overall presence of the entire body stiffness, we can see it everywhere, absolutely everywhere. So that's the total body engagement. Think of this. She's not even bending her legs here. So the entire body, there is no movement of the pelvis, no bending of the legs, nothing. So she's completely stiff. This is the encouragement for you to look at your own kids. Think about those phases. Think about those components of independence. And just to complete this phase, this part of our educational journey, I wanted to show you this. So this is truly remarkable. Look at this beautiful movement of the head. So where she is being held by two arms, but this remarkable movement of the head, selective, independent. She is looking at her mother, and you can see this is a high quality movement, real independence. This is what you want your child to achieve, the ability to control everything selectively. And without this selectivity, any higher aspirations, any higher goals like sitting and then potentially crawling and standing and so on, they will be highly unrealistic. You have to start looking at the fundamentals, start to get the right priorities and the right choice of targets. But before completing this section on the counterbalancing and sitting as the crowning achievement, as the big evolution, which includes the independence of the head, independence of the shoulder girdle, and independence of the trunk, I want to bring your attention, re-highlight again that stiffness is the reflection of weakness. External stiffness, the stiffness of the extremities, the stiffness of the superficial muscles, is the reflection of the internal weakness at the level of the deep core. You can see that once this little girl relaxes, she completely collapses. And this is a newly found situation of strength. You can see that in the sitting position, she is really comfortable. So, but at the same time, when she is being completely relaxed, what happens to her chest? Nothing. She doesn't collapse. She holds it strongly. And you can see that if I provide the same level of support, she is able to keep the arms independently. She is able to move them. She is able to control the head. And all of that is based on the strength of her entire trunk. So that's the key component. And you can see the stark differences between the two in these overall positions. So that's the key lesson. You need to get the independence if you want the high quality postural control, high quality positional control, but at the same time, to get out of the stiffness, you really have to take into account that the stiffness is being the reflection of deep intrinsic weakness. And I think that the case of this girl illustrates it really beautifully, so helping you to visualize these essential principles and to really think of your own kids and understanding how that works for them. Really get yourself into this mindset and ask this question: how can I help my child? What's the best long-term strategy? Do we really addressing the core, or are we struggling with just dealing with the periphery and dealing with the consequences, or even worse, falling into wishful thinking and celebrating 5 seconds or 10 seconds of holding the head in a position or sitting in a certain position without paying attention to the key things, the counterbalancing and independence. Well, thanks a lot for watching this part, and in the next part we're going to continue the exploration. So I'm going to finally bring you through the stages of transformation that this girl had, so that you will be able to see not only the big milestones, but you will be able to see the evolution that she gone through when going from 2007 to 2009 and then from 2009 to 2011 as the big changes and the big transitional steps in between.